Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is Aishman, your host, and today on this series of using GNS3 for network security, what we are going to do is now finally emulate a SOHO network. A SOHO network is a small office, home office network, something that you usually see in case of a office that's actually set up in a home, right? That's what the name says. And usually what it would consist of is your internet router and 2 to 3 devices. Let's say your smartphone, your computer, and your whatever tertiary device, could be a printer, could be something like that, attached to that Wi-Fi router. However, we must remember in this that your Wi-Fi router is not just routing, because routing happens between two networks. What it is also doing is actually switching. There's also an Ethernet switch built inside it. That's usually the LAN ports that are labeled right on your router. And what we're just going to do is we are going to build upon that previous topology that we created of a switch and two virtual PCs and add two virtual machines to it. One would be the Kali virtual machine that we'll use for attacking and scanning the network, and one would be an Ubuntu server that I'll just set up, just like that, right? And what we'll do is we'll run Nmap on Kali and just like scan the entire network to show you all that, you can actually do the reconnaissance that you should be doing when you like just enter a network and you want to test it for security. And furthermore, it will allow you to actually recognize the future pathways you could take to penetrate the victim machines out there, right? So without much ado, let's get into it. All right, everyone. So what you can see on the screen in front of me is my GNS3 network, right? This is the first deploy network that we had created in the last video. However, as you can see, I've actually added my Kali virtual machine already. I use VirtualBox. I'm a big fan of open source, right? So I'm using VirtualBox for the time being. I could also be using KVM and QEMU. I've heard that a lot of times. However, I still think that VirtualBox allows me to use something that's open source, but also easy to use, because at the end of the day, I want to learn and get the job done rather than, fix things around. But still, I could be using KVM and all. Absolute powerhouses, they are. Completely agree. But for the time being, I'm going to be using VirtualBox. And for all those new learners out there, I'll also recommend you guys to go with VirtualBox. And previously during the introduction, I said that we'll also be adding a test machine, right? A test server. Well, let me walk you guys through the steps on how you can add a virtual machine, especially or in particular, a VirtualBox virtual machine, right? So let's first zoom into the screen. All right. Now, as already visible, this is our topology, right? The Kali Linux virtual machine is already there. However, if you want to add our own virtual machine, right? Well, you will be adding your own virtual machine. So let me just walk through that as well. I'll quickly open VirtualBox, right? Now in this VirtualBox, you can see that I have this test server created. So this is the Kali machine that has been attached, and this is the machine I want to attach, right? And I also have these 3 separate Windows machines that I use, right? 2 of them are Windows 7. I use them for fun stuff, but they are not of use right now. And what I'll do first is on my test server, I'll click on settings. I'll go to network. Now, the first adapter is usually configured as a NAT adapter by default. I'll click on this and click on not attached. The reason for this is because when we'll connect our Ubuntu machine to the switch being emulated by GNS3, GNS3 will actually define the network adapter being used by Ubuntu, right? It's their way of making things easier for us. So, yep, just use not attached, right? Go to OK. And then what I'm going to do is I will go to this top left onto edit, preferences. And then like we discussed before, we have all of these different options, right? General server, GNS3, packet capture, so on and so forth. And what I'll do is I'll go to VirtualBox VMs. Right now, this is something I had previously. This is my Kali machine over here. And I'll focus on these 3 buttons below, right? New, edit, and delete. So first of all, let me delete the target machine because this is no longer being used. I'll click on new. then I have all the VMs listed already, right? Windows 7, Windows 7 Small, Windows Main, which is a Windows 11 virtual machine, and test server. I click on test service, that's what I want to add, right? And finish. Voila, that's it. That's all you had to do. You go into your VirtualBox, you change the adapter type to not attached, and you come on to GNS3, go to edit, go to preferences, navigate down to the VirtualBox menu, and just click on new and attach your VM. You don't need to do anything else. No other configuration required. I'll click on OK. I will have my virtual machine saved right over here. Let's see. Okay, it should be in endpoint devices, and right, it's over there. Test server, endpoint devices, test server. I'll click on this, I'll drag and drop. I'll just keep it over here to make it look a bit cleaner. I'll use my Ethernet symbol, right? Click on test server, Ethernet 0, click on switch 1, Ethernet 3, and that's done and dusted, out of this world. All right, so now we have test server 1, we have Kali Linux, we have PC1, PC2. Another thing you would want to configure and utilize during your time learning network security is Wireshark. Wireshark is probably the most basic network monitoring tool that every cybersecurity professional, networking professional, and honestly, any IT professional should know how to use, and to identify different kind of packets and how they're working, and like all the different protocols and their actual in-depth working, right? Like you have the TCP three-way handshake, you have the BGP broadcast and everything. To actually understand them, there's probably no tool better than Wireshark. And what you want to do is attach it to your GNS3. Again, what you'll do is you'll go to tools. You'll go to edit, preferences. Everything is in preferences, right? Let me zoom back in a bit. And there at the fourth option, I can see packet capture. For me, this was already pre-configured, so I didn't have to do anything. Just as kind of like a safety measure, I just put set, right? I just click that and I click on apply, click on OK. And yeah, there you go. That should make your Wireshark setup. Now, for Linux users out there, I don't know about Mac OS and Windows, right? But for Linux users out there, when you're going to be using Wireshark using this technique, you might get an error that your user is not added to the Wireshark group. So what I'd like all of you guys to do is quickly just do sudo usermod -a-g Wireshark $user. What this is basically doing is that there's a group in your Linux known as Wireshark, right? You can learn more about groups and users in your Linux man pages and on your online documentation about Linux itself. But a group is basically a container of users and is used to give them certain permissions. And you want to add your user to this Wireshark group. Usually only the root user is added. So what you do is you use sudo usermod -a-g Wireshark $user. $user is basically the bash command which holds your username, right? And yeah, usermod is just the command line utility. -a-g is basically append, and you want to append to a group, and that's it. You need to use sudo for it, and usually after this you do need to log out and log in once, right? So you run the command, you log out and you log back in, and everything should be ready. All right. So this was basically our entire setup. We attached the test server the same way you could attach your Kali Linux virtual machine, or if you want to attach your Windows virtual machine, well, basically anything. And we have PC1, PC2, our virtual PCs simulator setup as well. Let's just launch this topology and just see what happens. So I click as always on the green arrow over here. Yes, I want to start all devices. Booting, and yep, look at that. Not only did it start my emulated devices, such as the virtual PC simulator and the network switch, it also automatically started my virtual machines. That's why I love this software. It just makes it so easy for everyone to actually simulate large networks on just your laptop. Everything I'm doing right now is actually on a laptop. Yes, without a doubt, my specs of my laptop are pretty amazing. I did spend some money on it, right? However, I've been doing this for the past 3 to 4 years, and every time I've done it, I have used laptops such as mine, and even laptops which, well, also I own, so they're also mine, but they are of a lower specs, right? They have like an i5 8th generation, one of those U processors that is for like laptops, and no DGPU, although I don't need a dedicated GPU, and with only 16 GB of RAM. Right now I have 32 gigabytes of RAM, and I would recommend for all those serious learners out there to use at least have 16 to 24 gigabytes of RAM, right? In the meantime, let's just wait for everything to start. So my Ubuntu machine is starting. My Kali is all booted up. And as you can see over here, by zooming in on the right hand side, my other machine is also up and ready. Right. Yeah. Now, as always, the same as before, there's no PC1, PC2, switch 1, switch test server, right? So PC1, PC2, they have their consoles, but everything else does not have the console. I'd already discussed why switch 1 doesn't have the console. And as for Kali Linux and test server, well, same thing. They aren't working on Telnet. GNS is not going to configure anything apart from the network adapter, right? So you do not need to be worried about GNS3 trying to snoop into your, secret files and all of the data you stored on Kali Linux, right? So no worries about that. Now, let me just quickly see if my Ubuntu server has started. Starting. Okay, let's go. All right, so if I do if config, okay, yeah, forget that's installed on Ubuntu by default. So if I do IP adder, I can see that ENP OS3 or that 0S3. Well, Linux is showing that it's up, but there's no IP. Right. Similarly, if I go to Kali, you just quickly log in. Let me do IP adder again. ETH0, that's my interface, same as before. It's up, the link is up, but there's no IP. Well, that is because we are connected to a network switch. So the link is up because, well, it is actually up. It's actually connected to something. Well, virtually at least, right? However, there's no IP because at the end of the day, we have a switch. We don't have a DNS server, right? So what we're going to do is the same thing we did with PC1 and PC2. We're going to manually configure IP addresses on all 4 machines. So PC1, let me just put in this. IP adder 10.0.0.2, 255.255.255.0. Why did I get invalid? Oh, okay. It's just IP. Similarly here, IP 10.0.0.3, 255.255.255.0. Checking for duplicate, and that will be added successfully. Now, coming to Kali Linux and Ubuntu server. Now the thing is, Kali Linux and even Ubuntu server, if I'm correct, has a software known as Network Manager. Network Manager is what automates your Wi-Fi connections and Ethernet connections. So like the moment you boot up your laptop, it automatically connects to the Wi-Fi you had saved long ago, right? And now the issue is that when Network Manager cannot see any internet packet passing through, right, or receiving any kind of packet, right, what it does, it just deletes the IP address from that interface. Now that can be a bit irritating when you're trying to connect to a network with no internet, where you have to manually assign all the IPs, such as the situation we are right now in. So we have to run a command which basically disables Network Manager until the next reboot. So that command would be sudo nmcli dev set eth0 managed no. Boom, that's it. Then what I can just do is sudo IP adder at 10.0.0.6/24 dev eth0. Let me do a quick IP adder again, and voila, 10.0.6 is added. Ping 10.0.0.2, and yep, we have connection. Right, so we are able to connect to, if I was correct, PC1, right? Yes, PC1 indeed. Same thing over here. So what I'm going to do is sudo nmcli dev set enp VOS3 managed. No, test. And NMC is not found. Well, perfect. Network manager is not pre-installed on Ubuntu server, so we should not have this issue over here. We just directly run IP adder at 10.0.0.7/24 dev np aos3. All right, I forgot the sudo. And that's it. Let's just do IP adder and 10.0.0.7. Perfect. Awesome. So just to like make sure that everything is working, what we'll just do is ping 10.0.0.7 and boom. Right over there is exactly what we wanted. Now, what we can actually do, that we have created this network and we have all these IP addresses, working, is actually start testing out some network security or well security procedures overall. And one of the first thing that comes in like your MITRE attack framework, your cyber kill chain, and so on and so forth is recon. You have to collect all the information you can get. It could be via footprinting techniques, it could be via OSINT, right? And right now, what we're going to do is use Nmap, one of the most powerful tools out there, right? So, how should we do this? Well, first of all, you should know the Nmap commands. Online, there's the Nmap documentation. Again, pretty good. You might hear me saying again and again, go to this online documentation. Well, Ayushman, aren't we here to learn? Why aren't you not telling us? Why are you telling us to go to a documentation? Well, at the end of the day, as a cybersecurity professional or even in IT as a whole, right? What you have to do is keep on learning. And there are so many great minds out there, right? There are so many great minds that have come up with these beautiful tools that allow you to test, develop, program, automate, right? And they have so much knowledge that they have made all of those knowledge available through their official documentation, right? No matter what I say, what somebody else says, what someone on YouTube says, right? There will probably be more information in the documentation than there would ever be on YouTube in a single video. Again, there will be some cases, right, where the documentation might end up being very poor. However, for anything that you're going to learn, for anything that you plan on learning, and for anything that you do come across, always check the documentation, especially if it's a tool that's well loved by the industry. Without a doubt, there will be amazing documentation out there. So, and in case you want to do documentation checking in like your Linux program itself, you don't want to open the browser or you don't have internet connection, what you could probably do is just run man, right? Man is short for manual, if I'm correct. And you can just see, okay, what all can Nmap do, right? Example one, option summary. Now this is what we need to do. The first thing we need to do is host discovery, right? And what we need to do in this is we just want to ping all the hosts and check which host gives us a reply, right? So they have given us -sl, -sn, -pn, then if ps, pa, pu, py, port list, right? P, so on and so forth. We just need to check whether the host is there or not, right? So how we'll do this is we'll just use -sn, which is a ping scan, right? And put in the IP address using the CIDR notation. All right. So sudo nmap sn 10.0.0.0/24. Now I know for a fact that this is a class C network address because I configured it. And okay, what do you have over here? You have that all the IPs up are the IPs that we defined. 10.0.2, 0.3, 0.7, and 0.6. Amazing. These are all the IPs we had personally assigned. 6 is our Kali virtual machine. 7 is our Ubuntu server. And 2 and 3 are our virtual PCs. And yep, that's exactly what we wanted. We now have our own network running on a single real physical device, which we can now do whatever we want to. You want to do DOS attacks, you can do that. You want to like host a web server on Ubuntu server, right? And try to penetrate into that web server, you can do that. In fact, if you want to create your own malware, right? You want to create your own worm, your own self-propagating virus, right? You could actually deploy it on this network without worrying it leaking into, some of your internet, and you actually end up doing mass damage, Well, okay, it could still leak. There are always things out there that could leak. What might end up happening is that you make that malware, you run it via Kali Linux, it infects Kali Linux itself, and then sometime later, you shut down your entire GNS3 network and you start Kali Linux again, and now you connect Kali Linux to the internet. So the worm ends up propagating through the internet. Well, completely possible. But what you now have is a sandboxed environment that is basically you can play God with. Right. And we could be doing more simulations right now over here. We could be doing more attacks, right? I could be running your SYN-ACK. Okay, that's not installed on Kali. That's installed on my local machine. No issues with that. But, well, that would be a little bit out of scope for this video, especially considering we do have a time crunch. I'm already nearing, I guess, 20 minutes at this point. Let's quickly just go through Wireshark, right? Because that's another important tool of the trade. So, in order to use Wireshark with GNS3, what you need to do is you click on any link on these machines, right? For what I'll do is I click on the Kali Linux, I'd Kali Linux to the switch link, right click, and we can see start capture. Click on start capture, it will do the file name, Ethernet, start the capture visualization program is checked. Okay. And yep, boom, there we have it. Our Kali Linux is now getting recorded by Wireshark. So let me quickly go over here to Kali Linux. Let me just ping 10.0.0.7 and let me press enter. And all the packets are actually getting captured. All the packets coming in and out of Kali Linux are getting captured. So what you could end up doing is, for example, you run Wireshark on one of the victim machines, then you can like run your malware or run a DOS attack, anything of that sort, and just see what packets are actually reaching your machine and what packets is your machine sending back, right? So now let me do something else, right? This time let me just do Alt F4, stop and quit without saving. Let me do it against test server 1, start capture. Okay. Perfect. And I'll go to Kali Linux. Right. And what I'll do this time is, okay, first let me see. Did we get some packets? Okay, we did get some packets as well. There are all the packets that were going previously to like Kali Linux and all. I guess we're recording all the packets. All right, no issues. So what we actually need to do is see what happens when we do an Nmap port scan. Sudo Nmap-ss 0.0.7. Now -ss is also known as a half TCP scan. Basically what your Kali machine does is it just opens the TCP handshake by sending a SYN packet, but it doesn't send any reply. But if it gets a reply via that SYN packet from the server or from like whichever client you were targeting, then it considers that port open. To understand more, you could look into the TCP three-way handshake, how the SYN, SYN-ACK, all of those things work. But time being, let's just run it over here. And let's see what our packet capture got. Where is Wireshark? There's Wireshark. And okay, yep. You can see over here, we got all of these SYN packets going from our Kali machine, right, to our target machine, right over here. So 10.0.6, our Kali machine, send a packet to 10.0.7. It sent a SYN packet. However, it sent it on the destination port 5633. As we can already see via our Nmap, that port is closed, right? Which is why we got the reset acknowledgement flag from our Ubuntu server. And what we can see over here is basically how the attack commenced, how the attack took place. What did our Kali machine do? We can see over here it's sending so many of these SYN packets. What did Ubuntu machine do? It just replied with reset, acknowledge that, you know what? We don't have this port open. We are really sorry about it. Right. It is 19, 843, so on and so forth. I could filter these results to actually check what happened when we searched for when we sent the packet for port 22, because Nmap is reporting to us that port 22 is open. So we'd have to doubt what Ubuntu would have done is, rather than sending the reset acknowledgement packet, it would have sent us the SYN acknowledgement packet. Let me see if I can do it right over here. Okay, so destination port. Let me just quickly come over here. Okay, no, let me do it this way then. This will probably make it a bit easier for us. Yep, 21. Okay, yeah, but this isn't showing us in that way, right? No issues. We could probably apply display filter. TCP.port equals 22. Let's just apply this. And yep, we can see right over here. The way it got sent, let's do it by time then. Right, is that our attacker sent a SYN packet and our defender, the Ubuntu server, sent back a SYN acknowledgement packet, which means that Nmap got the flag it needed and it flagged SSH as open. And then we can see in the next one that Ubuntu server sent the reset packet because, well, Kali never really replied after that. It just wanted to check where it got the SYN acknowledgement packet. So folks, there it is. This is GNS3 101 for network security, I guess. What you now know is how to create a basic topology, attach your virtual machines to it, and actually be able to use Wireshark and your Nmap tools within this. You could experiment further, use this as your sandbox platform, develop anything and everything you want. And I really hope this helps you and you continue learning, continue hacking safely and ethically. This is Aishman going out.